Welcome to another edition of Inside the Artist with your host, John J. Ruppert. Today is February 25th, 2020, and we're delighted once again to bring you inside the world of renowned author Emiliano Martin, who has just released an amazing new book, Spain's Footprints in Philadelphia, an Unknown Colonial History. Good morning, Mr. Martin. How are you today?
Good morning, John. I'm doing fine, thank you.
Congratulations on your new book, Spain's Footprints in America, an Unknown Colonial History. Please tell us a little bit about it.
Well, this is a book I have been working on for a long time, and it is about the story of Spanish immigrants coming to the city of Philadelphia. The kind of story that most people don't know about it, and it happened actually in the colonial days when George Washington was around the city.
Why did you decide to write this fascinating book on America's unknown colonial history?
First of all, I was intrigued by history all my life. I've been a history follower. And when I found out about these happenings took place in the city, I noticed that very little things were written about it. So, since I started to gather information about A, B, C, D, I put it in writing and eventually I came up with a book.
Nice. What are some of the things you learned while doing your research for this book?
I learned a lot about history, of course. I learned a lot about people I didn't know what they did in detail. I did learn everything they did, how they went about it, and the influence they had later on in, for example, in the independence war of the United States against England. Something that happened in this country that most people do not know about.
Why do you think this important part of American history has been, as they say, swept under the carpet?
I don't know if I want to use the expression swept under the carpet, but I know that it is a kind of a history that has not been exposed to the public. That is a fact. Textbooks do not mention about it, even though historians and heavy book writers know about it. But somehow the story has not been made public throughout the years. And when I mention it to people, they say, "Oh, really?" So it's kind of surprising to me that, yeah, this happened and nobody knows about it.
Who were some of the most important Spanish figures in your book and why?
Juan de Miralles, who happened to be one of the first people to be in touch with General George Washington, was very instrumental in helping, in organizing the material, the supplies, the guns, the ammunition, the blankets, the tents for the army of George Washington. That is documented, not by me, but by other historians that have been on the subject for a long time, but it's not made public.
If you could talk to any of the original Spanish settlers, who would it be, and what would you like to say to them or ask them?
I would simply say thank you for what you have done. Without their assistance, help, initiative, of course we would be here today because somebody else could have done it. But I would simply say thank you. They were brave people who did something for the future of America.
Do you have a particular person in mind?
I did mention Juan de Miralles, who was the first person in Philadelphia, but there was another one, Diego de Gardoqui, who was the first ambassador from Spain to the United States, and he did coordinate tremendous amount of information back and forth with the country, and he even signed a treaty with the American government, what is called the Mississippi Treaty. At that time it was very, very important for both the United States and Spain. He was very influential as far as I'm concerned.
How did you first learn about Spain's footprints in Philadelphia?
When when I first came to this country, I was in touch with some old-timers, immigrants from the old country, that knew a lot about the city. Some of them, their families were immigrants in the city way back in the 1920s or the early century. I'm talking about the 20th century. They told me stories that I felt very much intrigued by it, and I wanted to know more. And talking to them, I found out a lot of information.
Do you believe, based on your research and findings, that America should showcase more of what Spain did to help ensure their successful freedom from England?
Well, like they say, it is water over the dam. It happened, how it happened. There are reasons to believe why no more credit was given to the Spanish government or the Spanish people in the city. Somehow, Spain was not well perceived by the American establishment at that time because Spain owned territories in Central and South America, while in North America, theoretical independence from a European power. So that was a thorn. That was something that the American government didn't like. Spain owns territories in the American continent.
Have you written any poems about Spain's footprints in America? And if so, would you like to share them with your audience?
There is an interesting story that I did mention in the book about a poem I wrote and I read in front of the public in a big auditorium in the University of Pennsylvania, Harrison Auditorium, which is an 800-seat auditorium. And I was given the opportunity to recite this poem in this particular occasion for a Spanish ballerina, a Spanish dancer, that was performing her steps on the stage, and while she danced to the music of the guitar, I recited to her a poem that people did enjoy very much, I believe. And if you don't mind, I can read it.
Sure, we'd love to hear it.
It is in the book, and the poem is called Of Olive Skin. It was written for Julia Lopez. Julia Lopez was a Spanish dancer, flamenco dancer in the Philadelphia area that for many years owned a restaurant in Chestnut, 2nd and Chestnut. And she did perform all over the area. Of Olive Skin. I have known women, and few are like her, sensitive like a flower, shining like a star. Her body is like a doll made of long black hair with beautifully shaped arms and a burning flame in her eyes. I have seen her fierce dancing. She made me dream while awake. When she dances, her feet makes the earth quake from the fire within her. When she sings, her passionate voice penetrates with feeling. She sings, she dances the fandango, the seguirillas or some tientos, the folk songs of her country, leaving behind tender memories of combs, castanets, fans, and flamenco. She's a woman of olive skin, and she carries Spain inside and out.
Wonderful.
Thank you, John.
Growing up in Spain, what do you remember was said or what you read about Spain's footprints in America as a child?
In history, what was mentioned about America, especially Philadelphia, it was the capital of the United States at the time of the Independence War, and it was briefly mentioned that the events that took place in the city of Philadelphia while the revolution took place. We were told about the Saratoga battle, we were told about the fights between the English generals and the American soldiers, but it was a brief story in the history books. We didn't go into details like they do in America.
So even in Spain, they didn't talk that much about your footprints?
Not at all. They didn't even mention it. As a matter of fact, the people I do mention in the book are rarely mentioned in the Spanish books. Very, very seldom people. There is only one individual in the Spanish history that is mentioned, a person who participated heavily in the American Revolution. Even most Americans don't know about it, even though there is a big statue of him in the sidewalk of the State Department in Washington, D.C. I'm talking about General Galvez. General Galvez helped the American army to fight against the British, but not in Philadelphia. He never came to Philadelphia. He fought for the American troops down in the south. As a matter of fact, there is a town in Texas, now it is called Galvez Town, which was given to his name. His name was Galvez, and the town became the city of Galvez. It was given to him by the American president as a sign of appreciation for the victory he took. Most Americans know about the Battle of Pensacola. What they don't realize is that the battle was fought between the Spanish troops and the English. And of course, everybody knows who won, the American troops.
Yeah. Has there ever been any movies, plays, or songs written about this subject in Spain?
Not that I remember. There is no movie on that particular subject. However, there is a movie, a long-time movie, called Buccaneers, in which Yul Brynner was a pirate, and it was also acted by Charlton Heston. It's an old movie, and at the end of the movie they do mention something about the Spanish participation in what is now the territories of Louisiana, which is where the Spanish were, along the French. But there's just a couple of scenes where they mention about the Spanish participation in that area. But there is no movie on the subject of Spain in the Revolutionary War.
Or maybe if they're reading your book, they'll make a movie.
Hope so. It would be a nice subject to go about.
Who is the biggest political figure from Spain living in America today, and what is his or her title?
I would say the biggest person right now would be the ambassador in Washington. They keep changing names every other week. I'm not trying to be funny about it, but because of the political situation in Spain, they change ambassadors as they please.
And what is the responsibility of an ambassador? Like, it's a go-between? What do they do?
They play a lot of golf. And they go to a lot of parties. In theory, they are supposed to represent the country they come from in the country they are invited, like in this case, the United States. Should anything happen, they exchange news. Sometimes if bad things happen, and they do happen from time to time, the ambassadors are expelled from the embassy and not to return until things go back into a positive path. But I know they do have a lot of ceremonial activities.
Is there any old Spanish headquarters left in Philadelphia from colonial times?
Not anymore. We don't even have a council. At one time, Philadelphia, as you know, was the capital of the United States, and the Embassy of Spain was in Philadelphia. As a matter of fact, in my book, I do mention the location of this first embassy of the United States, and still there today. As a matter of fact, walking down the sidewalk, at the door, there is a big flag with a Spanish symbol indicating that this was the place of residence of blah, 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 blah. And they do mention who was the ambassador at that time. And it was at the time of George Washington.
Has America ever stepped in to help Spain like Spain did for them?
Not in those terms. As a matter of fact, America has fought Spain. There is an episode in history in 1898 where America declared war to Spain. Remember the name?
Spanish-American War.
It was the Spanish-American War. So it was a war that didn't last more than 3 months. The Spanish Navy was wiped out completely. The Spanish troops were defeated in San Juan, the Battle of San Juan with Theodore Roosevelt.
What was the war about? Do you remember?
It's a very deep subject. The war was about putting an end to Spanish domination in the American hemisphere. Spain at the time had lost the land, have conceded independence to Mexico, Argentina, Chile, Venezuela, so on and so on. But at that time they kept Cuba, Puerto Rico, and in the west coast, the Philippines. The American government didn't like that. The President Monroe, the Monroe Doctrine said America is for the Americans. So they declared the war to Spain. Unfortunately, there was a blow up of the ship, the Maine, in the Havana harbor, and that was the excuse to declare war to Spain, and in 3 months it was over. The Spanish troops were defeated. There was another intervention of American, not the government, but American interests to send troops to Spain in 1937. It was formed what they called the Lincoln Battalion. It was made by volunteers. At that time they were offered from $500 to $1,000. Young kids. They were sent over to Europe to fight for freedom, to fight fascism, to fight whatever it was. But they were given some money on a trip to go to Spain to fight against, unfortunately, the side that lost the war. So it was a big disaster for the so-called Lincoln Battalion.
How did you come up with your title, and did you have any others in mind?
The title was, it came just about the way it is. I saw footprints of Spain and all over the city, because they are in the city. It's not that my imagination, it's not that I came up with a title or I came up with pages of, the footprints are there. We have statues of the first ambassador, we have the building of the first embassy, we have a big church that used to be in Philadelphia, a big Catholic center for Spanish-speaking people. We have the old St. Mary's Church down it's in center city, but it's almost going down south. The old St. Mary's held for many years seats for the Spanish people in the church, because there were so many in that area that, and a lot of people don't even know that they were there. As a matter of fact, in the book I mentioned about the Spanish market that ran from Lombard to South Street on 2nd Street. Used to be run on every weekend, and that was in 1905, 1906, 1907, giving birth later on in 1915 to what we call now the Italian market.
Wow.
In South Philadelphia. So the footprints are there. It's just people don't know about it, nor do we care, except me and the book.
Mm-hmm. And your readers.
I hope so.
What would you like your readers of this book to walk away with upon reading it?
Knowledge of what happened, how it happened, and who did it. They say knowledge is power. Well, it may not be too important, but the information is there. It's in the book.
Where can we purchase copies of your book, Spain's Footprints in America and Unknown Colonial History?
Right now the book is being offered in internet outlets, Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, the publisher, Lulu.com, and many other outlets. If you go to the internet and the Google section of the internet and you type in the name Footprints of Spain in Philadelphia, a lot of outlets will pop up for you to decide who is the cheapest or who is the most reliable outlet.
Now, right now, the book is currently in English. Is it going to be in Spanish available as well?
Yeah, obviously it is in English, and the Spanish version is coming up next month. This is the cover page of the book. It's been, like I said, it's being offered in the internet, and some copies have been sold already. I've been told that people are interested.
What is your contact information for those wanting to learn more about your upcoming events and upcoming publications?
Obviously, the internet is an outlet these days for everyone. You type somebody's name, and somehow, almost by magic, information about this individual will appear. Well, in my case, if you type in my name, Emiliano Martin, author of whatever book I have written, or just simply author, my name, my activities will pop up in the internet. I assume even my criminal records. I don't have any, but all the information is there today.
Is there anything else you would like to tell your readers about your book, Spain's Footprints in America, An Unknown Colonial History?
Well, I know that people who will read this book will come up with a nice feeling because a lot of information is there. And it's kind of an information that is good to have for social occasions where we talk to individuals about ABC. It's not something that, it's not a regular conversation about the Eagles lost last week or they want to win next week. And this is something different that people may share information with each other. And, oh really, I didn't know that. And it's a nice piece of information that you can be proud of. And knowledge doesn't hurt to anyone.
What are some of the books or projects you're currently working on, and what books have you released recently?
I'm working on a book of poetry, poems that I have written some time ago, and I haven't finished because you yourself as a poet know that we never finish a poem until we decide, that's it, I'm not writing about it anymore. But I'm touching up my spelling, thoughts, grammar, punctuation. I'm going through the whole manuscript, and I have about 200 poems I want to either put in a book or make 2 books out of it. I don't know how to go about it yet. But at the same time, I'm working on more new poems, and I never stop. I just keep going and going and going. And it's not a problem, but it keeps me busy.
What are some of the books you've released recently?
Recently, I have put out 4 or 5 books. I've written Vulnerable Excellence, which is the story of Salvador Dali, the painter. A great individual, a fascinating figure of history. It's about 99 pages of stories, even poems about Salvador Dali. I have written a book on haiku, Daydreaming in Verse. I have written a Spanish version of my military experience in the Spanish army when I was drafted. That was a long time ago. And I was lucky enough to present that book even in Spain not too long ago. And people liked it. A lot of people I served with, they're still around, old guys like me. They were fascinated by, oh yeah, you're right, man, I forgot. And it was, I'm very proud of that issue. Recently I have put together Spain Footprints in Philadelphia, which I'm very proud of it. I mean, it took me a long time to put it together, but it was a lot of fun doing so, and I'm really very proud. And now I'm going to release the Spanish version of this book, which will be out in a couple of weeks, I hope so.
And this book has recently been a subject of front page in a local newspaper, correct?
Actually, it was, yeah, about last week. As a matter of fact, last week it was in the front page of a local paper, and I was very pleased to see the front page with the cover of my book and the story about myself and blah blah blah. It was a very nice article written by Samantha Bambino, who's a Actually, she's the director of that newspaper, and she wrote herself the story. And I was very pleased to see that. Whoa, look at me in the front page.
Emiliano, thank you again for your time, and we look forward to more projects in the future.
You are very welcome, John. Thank you.